This is a story about parallel play. If North American trade in autos goes back and forth among the three countries, and trade in agriculture is largely U.S. exports, when it comes to energy, one size definitely does not fit all. The U.S. generally imports oil from Canada and exports natural gas to Mexico. The USMCA may aspire to be multilateral, but in practice it looks more like two bilateral arrangements.
Most Americans are completely shocked when they find out that Canada is their largest supplier of energy. They think it's Saudi Arabia or a country in the Middle East, and so they're often quite surprised to find out that 60% of their oil exports come from north of the border. In my experience, Americans just don't think about Canada the way Canadians do.
Even though the energy relationship between the U.S. and Canada is a productive one, energy is the main reason the U.S.'s trade deficit with Canada reached about $46 billion in 2025.
Canada may already hold the winning card in this energy fight, and the U.S. cannot take it away. While America tries to increase the pressure, it is also putting its own industries at risk. There's one powerful reason this strategy is backfiring, and almost nobody is talking about it. The United States started an energy trade war with a country that supplies more than 60% of its crude oil imports, more than half of its primary aluminum, 85% of its potash, and the majority of its uranium fuel for nuclear power plants. That is not a trade war against a foreign competitor. That is a trade war against the country whose resources keep American industry running. And the reason America will not win this fight is not political, it is geological. The resources are in Canada. The deposits do not move. The pipelines and smelters and mines exist where they exist. No tariff schedule changes that. Oil is the place to start because the numbers there are the most dramatic. Canada supplies roughly 60% of all crude oil imported into the United States. American Midwest refineries, particularly those in Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan, were physically built to process Alberta heavy crude. Their coker units, hydrotreaters, and distillation configurations are tuned to the specific density and sulfur content of Western Canadian Select. Reconfiguring those refineries to process lighter crude grades would require capital expenditure measured in hundreds of millions of dollars per facility, years of construction downtime, and full replacement of specialized processing equipment. Those refineries cannot simply switch feedstocks when Canadian crude becomes more expensive from tariff pressure. They either pay what the market demands, or they run at reduced capacity while a reconfiguration project that takes years is completed. Before the Trans Mountain expansion entered service in May 2024, Canadian producers had essentially no alternative to that situation. Their crude moved south or it moved nowhere. That captive market condition produced the Western Canadian Select discount Alberta oil consistently selling at $20, $25, and at times $40 per barrel below West Texas Intermediate because producers had nowhere else to send it. The TMX changed that arithmetic permanently. 35 tankers per month are now loading at the West Ridge Marine Terminal in Burnaby and heading to buyers in China, South Korea, Japan, and India. The discount that American refineries collected for decades is being compressed by Asian competition. Every time an American refinery tries to pressure Canadian producers on price, a Chinese independent refiner is standing next to them offering LME-linked Brent pricing. The West Coast oil pipeline proposal that Canada submitted to the Federal Major Projects Office on July 3rd, 2026 would add 1 million barrels per day of Pacific export capacity on top of the Trans Mountain System's 890,000 barrels per day. Combined Pacific export capacity approaching 1.9 million barrels per day from a producing base of approximately 3.8 million barrels per day would mean that half of Alberta's total output could reach Asian buyers, directly permanently eliminating the leverage that American refineries have historically exercised through Alberta's landlocked geography. The moment that pipeline is built, the structural condition that gave American buyers pricing power over Canadian crude disappears. They become one buyer among many, competing at global market prices. Aluminum follows the same logic with different numbers. Canada produces more than half of all primary aluminum consumed in the United States annually, approximately 2.7 million metric tons. Quebec's 9 smelters run on hydroelectric power, giving Canadian aluminum a carbon footprint 1/6 of the global industry average. The US Midwest premium for aluminum hit a record $2,182 per metric ton in early 2026, more than double the previous record set during the 2022 supply chain crisis. That premium exists because American manufacturers cannot replace Canadian supply with domestic production at equivalent cost. And the 50% Section 232 tariff on Canadian aluminum has made the existing supply more expensive without creating the domestic alternatives it was supposed to incentivize. Rio Tinto is now adding scarcity surcharges on top of the record premium. General Motors has warned investors that tariffs could cost the company $3 billion to $4 billion in 2026. The tariff that was supposed to protect American manufacturers is the tariff destroying their cost competitiveness. The potash situation is perhaps the most straightforward demonstration of why the United States cannot win this resource conflict. American domestic potash production is approximately 400,000 metric tons per year. American domestic potash consumption is approximately 5.3 million metric tons per year. Canada produces 36 times more potash than the United States and supplies roughly 85% of American potash imports. The alternative suppliers are Russia and Belarus, both operating under Western sanctions frameworks. When the Trump administration imposed a 25% tariff on Canadian potash in February 2025, farm state Republican senators immediately began lobbying for exemptions. Within days, an executive order reduced the potash tariff to 10%. The senators understand what the tariff architects apparently did not model. There's no alternative to Canadian potash on any timeline that matters for the American planting season. You can lower the tariff, or you can watch American farmers pay more for fertilizer. Those are the two options. Uranium is the quietest leverage point in the entire resource relationship. Canada holds high-grade uranium reserves in the Athabasca Basin of Saskatchewan, the highest grade deposits anywhere on Earth. Cameco, the Saskatoon-headquartered company that is one of the world's two largest uranium producers, signed a $2.6 billion supply agreement with India in March 2026 and holds long-term contracts with European buyers through 2036. American nuclear power plants consume uranium. A growing share of that uranium comes from Canadian mines. As the United States advances its nuclear renaissance, adding reactor capacity to power AI data centers, EV charging networks, and electrified industrial facilities, Canadian uranium supply becomes more strategically significant, not less. The country applying tariffs to Canadian goods is simultaneously depending on Canadian uranium to keep its lights on. The energy diversification Canada has built since 2024 reinforces all of these resource leverage points simultaneously. The Kisi Lissams LNG agreement with Germany's CEFE, 1 million metric tons per year for up to 20 years, commits Canadian natural gas to European buyers for 2 decades. The Canada-Japan critical minerals stockpiling discussions are active. The Canada-BC Prosperity Agreement signed July 2nd commits $10 billion to the Roberts Bank terminal upgrade that will unlock $100 billion in new Pacific trade capacity. LNG, Canada Phase 2, Cedar LNG, and Woodfibre LNG are all in the federal permitting acceleration framework. The energy infrastructure Canada is building in 2026 is the infrastructure of a country that has decided its resources will reach global markets at global prices, not at the discount that American infrastructure dependency imposed for decades. The United States entered this trade conflict with the assumption that Canada needed American market access more than America needed Canadian resources. That assumption was true in 2015, before the Trans Mountain expansion was built. It was partially true in 2020 when CUSMA was signed and Alberta crude had limited Pacific alternatives. It is not true in 2026. Canada has built the infrastructure, signed the contracts, and established the bilateral partnerships that give its resource producers alternatives to the American market. Those alternatives are operational. The tankers are loading. The LNG shipments are underway. The Japanese discussions are active. The European agreements are signed. Every percentage point of tariff applied to Canadian resources accelerates the commercial logic of building more non-American export capacity. The Section 232 tariffs on Canadian aluminum are the reason Quebec producers are redirecting shipments to Europe. The automotive tariff is the reason Volkswagen Street, Thomas Gigafactory, is supplying batteries for vehicles not going to the American market. The lumber tariffs are the reason Canadian forestry companies are signing European mass timber supply agreements. The trade war America started against its largest energy supplier is the trade war that is funding Canada's energy independence.